lower fares, new services and more passengers. That was Margaret Thatcher's prediction when she privatised the British bus sector, stripping out local authorities of their traditional role in running the service. By any measure, deregulation has failed to deliver on those promises, and now, after almost 40 years, Strathclyde Partnership for Transport is set to consider bringing Glasgow's buses back under public control. Well, Andrew Carter is Chief Executive of Centre for Cities, whose Miles Better report set the ball rolling on this potential reform. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
And what did you look at in terms of your report? Was it the economics of all of this?
Yeah, so we started with the economics. So basically asked the question, if Glasgow city region, the broader area, had a better bus transport system, what sort of economic effects might that have? And we recognised other factors, air quality, engagement with people who are maybe not accessing the labour market, but we pretty much started from an economic point of view.
So what is your assessment of how good or otherwise the service is at the moment and how much better it could potentially be?
Well, so when we looked at it, unsurprisingly, we looked at how our Glasgow and how other big British cities compared to European cities, and sadly, our British cities are well behind their European counterparts on a range of measures in relation to public transport. We reckon that if you increase the frequency, if you increase the reliability, if you increase the services into certain parts of the Glasgow city region, you could be accessing an additional 300,000, 400,000 people. So you can increase the sort of size of the bus market by 30 or 40%.
Because the network has been in something of decline, hasn't it? The numbers of people using the buses has gone down.
Yes, you started the reference by in terms of bus regulation. Did you give you a sense, since bus regulation, bus usage in London has doubled since the regulation period, so late 1980s, early 1990s. It's doubled in London, which was never deregulated. It's always had a regulated bus system, and every other of our big British cities is essentially halved. Now, deregulation is not the only story behind that, but it's a significant part of the story.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, why can't we see the kind of increases that you're talking about under the model that is currently operated by these private companies?
Because essentially in this system, it's a free-for-all. So private operators are free to do pretty much what they want. They run the services they want in the areas that they want, at the frequency they run, and that they charge the fares that they want. Whereas if you think about London, and increasingly now more recently in Manchester, it's the public transport authority that says this is where the services are go, this is how often they're going to go, this is the integrated ticketing system that we now have, and these are the fares that we're going to charge. And then they contract with private service or private contractors in order to deliver those services. So they're able to organise and coordinate the system, and most importantly, they can connect the bus system to the rail system, to the underground system. So that essentially you start to see places having an integrated transport system, which we take for granted when we go to pretty much every other European country.
Yeah, on the face of it, the idea of, potentially buying out these private companies or setting up a network on its own would be an expensive one. As you say, Manchester's gone down the road of this franchise network. Just explain to us exactly how that works in practice.
Yeah, so it's the franchise essentially is where the public transport authority, so Strathclyde Partnership for Transport in this example, they would set out the terms and conditions. So they would say, these are the routes, this is the frequency, this is the fare, these are the standards, here's the ticketing requirements, here's the branding, etc., here's the marketing. They would set out essentially the terms and conditions, the rules on the ground, and then they would contract with private operators that are currently in the market or indeed might come into the market to say who wants to deliver these services under these kinds of conditions. And that's pretty much what Transport for London has done for the last 40 years. They run some services, but primarily they're managing the services and they're run by the private sector or the community sector, whoever it might be. And that's the model also now that we're seeing being rolled out in Greater Manchester.
And would that be appealing to these private companies in Glasgow, do you think? In the greater area?
Yes, it is. Because actually, when you talk to lots of the bus operators that operate in these markets, and as I've said, this is standard in not only in London, but actually across Europe, it's their guarantee, right? So they're setting themselves up in contracts of 5 to 7 years. They know if they deliver what is expected, there's steady income. They, in a sense, they know what's expected of them. They know the income. So that actually, the evidence suggests that actually encourages further investment from the private operators in higher quality buses, for example, electric vehicles and lower emission vehicles, because there is certainty in the system. And when you talk to bus operators, that's pretty much the sort of standard response that you get.
What sort of challenges might Strathclyde Passenger Transport face?
So I think there's obviously a capacity question. This is a big deal. Said TfL, Transport for London, have been doing this for a very long time. TfGM, Transport for Greater Manchester, are now doing it. So there's a capacity question that will need to be built on. Obviously, there's a funding question. Can't get away from that. In a sense, this does cost, both in terms of the transition from one system to the next. Different estimates suggest that over a 5 to 7 year period, that might be around £100 million. And then there's our operational cost on ongoing. So we can't get away from that, although I would say there's quite a bit of public money swashing around in the bus transport system already. They could definitely be better used. And I suppose my final point is, in terms of challenge, to make it really work, when you look at places elsewhere across the world, it's because they integrate the transport system with where they build housing and where they permit commercial development. So it's not just seeing transport in a silo, but actually integrating it into how the city region or the city works more effectively. If you do that, then you really do get the gains of better services, lower fares, higher frequencies.
Well, look, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Andrew Carter there. He is Chief Executive of Centre for Cities. They conducted that report into the potential change to the bus service in and around Glasgow. After 8, we will speak to the Chief Executive of Strathclyde Passenger Transport.
We've been asking you for your thoughts on the buses. Lizzie's been in touch on X. She says the person who texted earlier with regards to Edinburgh buses said it was £3.80 a day. It's not. It's £5 a day for a day ticket. She says it's clearly been a while since they bought one. She says the bus service is still good, but it's not like it once was. Stretch budget, she says, plus dealing with endless roadworks and tramworks. It depends how frail you are, is whether it's good or not to use.
And Sandy says, shout out to the bus drivers across Scotland doing a responsible job in a professional way. He says this is a job that requires a range of skills, including driving with pinpoint accuracy and dealing with all sorts of customers in a responsible way.
What are the services like where you are? Would you like to see Strathclyde Partnership for Transport bring buses back into their control rather than it being private companies? And what's it like where you are? Hashtag BBCGMS. The text is 80295. I have to admit, it's a very long time since I've been on a bus because they don't run in the morning when I need to get to work.
Well, and that is an issue. I see lots of buses on my way to work, but they're all empty because they're all heading out to start their routes.
Yeah.
So they're not in service, as the sign at the front says. Yeah, keep your messages coming. Do get in touch with us.